Support for Amplified Voices comes from the Restorative Action Foundation. Learn more at restorativeactionalliance.org.
Everyone has a voice, a story to tell. Some are marginalized and muted. What if there were a way to amplify those stories? To have conversations with real people in real communities? A way to help them step into the power of their lived experience. Welcome to Amplified Voices, a podcast lifting the experiences of people and families impacted by the criminal legal system. Together, we can create positive change for everyone.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Amplified Voices. I'm your host, Jason, here with my co-host, Amber. Good morning, Amber.
Good morning, Jason.
And today we're meeting Theresa. Hello, Theresa.
Yes, good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Theresa. We're so happy to have you on the podcast today.
Yes, good morning, Amber. How are you?
So, Theresa, we're going to start our conversation with the question that we've asked most of our guests, and that is, could you tell us a little bit about your life prior to your involvement with the criminal legal system, and then what happened that brought you into it?
Well, my life in the beginning, I became a mother at late age 24. And, I worked in the system of the city system as a caseworker for about 5 or 6 years. And then from there, I moved on and kind of got caught up in the world of foulness in the streets, but pulled myself out of that, came into recovery, and then I started working in security. And from there, my husband, who I had been with since I was 15 years old, experiencing him going in and out of the prison system took a lot on me. And then this last time, it took me into working with release aging people in prison, which is known as RAP. I got to know about RAP by doing a rally for securists to stop them from giving us.
I'm sorry, Theresa. So I have a question for you. So where do you live?
I live in Harlem.
Okay. And did you grow up in Harlem?
All my life.
So you are a New York City Harlem woman.
Yes, I am.
When you say your whole life, I'm hesitant to ask you your age, but give us a feel for that.
Okay, I'll give you a feel. I was born in 1960.
All right. Okay. So, because I know we're going to be talking about release aging people in prison, RAP, which you're involved with a little bit later on. You've been on the planet for a little while, basically.
Yes.
Okay. And so you grew up in Harlem, and your husband also grew up, and you've known him since you were 15 years old.
Yes.
Okay. So how did the two of you meet?
Well, we lived in the same block. We lived on the same block. And, he was my husband is 6 years older than me. And, the attraction of, at that time, you're a young woman, and you're not even a woman yet. You're still a young girl, but there's this guy that seems to keep being attracted to you. And you found out that he was attractive just as well as I was to him. And I used to wouldn't want to talk to him because I would always see him always around me, and I would be like, I'm not talking to him. But when they asked me to go to lunch, so I'm looking at him like, what you know about a lunch date? This is insane. So, okay, we went to where we lived at. We had two parks, Central Park, and we had what they call Marcus Garvey Park today. We known it as Mark Morris Park back then. So we went to Mark Morris Park, set up on the rock, and we ate a sandwich. And to me, that sandwich turned into such a lovely date that I couldn't get him out my brain for nothing. But life moved on. He started getting incarcerated back and forth. So kind of like we had missed each other out for maybe about 2 or 3 years, and then it came back around. Long story short, we wound up calling ourselves boyfriend and girlfriend. That grew into us being around each other more, doing more things together. I even played hooky from school just to hang out with him. And, time went on and we moved moving forward, things started getting a little more crazy for him. I had to take my turn of events and take care of my life because I was like, I'm not going down what I call a rabbit hole because he kept going back and forth to jail. Like, no, I'm not doing that. So I moved on.
So what was that like for you? Like the first time he was incarcerated and you're his girlfriend, was that normal in your community? Were people supportive of you? I mean, what was that like?
No, it wasn't normal because my parents were not aware of us being boyfriend and girlfriend for a long time. So him going to jail, it was like I had to really say, okay, that's where he went and I'm not there, because like I said, I wasn't raised to be in the streets. My parents would have a real hard time with that. So I wouldn't never go visit him. I would never go visit him. He would write me. I would write him back. I would have to sneak the mail out the mailbox so that my parents wouldn't see it. It was a lot of communication at that time through mail. So when he came home, here we were once again, and we got together. And then, like I said, my husband has had jail has been almost all his life, basically. So he was out for maybe about 5 or 6 years, and then he stole a car, and he wound up back in jail. So I had to move on with my life. I couldn't sit still and do all of that, waiting and carrying on. So I moved on, and I met my oldest daughter's father, and I had gotten pregnant by him. We moved to Puerto Rico. I lived in Puerto Rico for like a year and a half. And my mom took sick. So I came home, me and my baby came home, and I had to make sure she was okay. Maybe about a year later, my husband popped up again out of jail. Here he was in my way again. I call it in my way because I could never get this man out of my system. He was always in my system. So me and my oldest daughter's father, we broke up because it was just too much for him and whatever the case may be. I let him go ahead about his business, but back to my now husband. And it took some time, and then I got pregnant with his first child, but we lost his son. That kind of crushed him.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that crushed him really bad. And I don't know, maybe that's what sent him back out to the streets and then whatever else he was doing. But he came home, and process took its time for him. I know it took time for me because one of his aunts was a nurse, so he went running to her to ask her, like, what do this, that, and the other. Oh, she was sick, and this, that, and the other. So the aunt explained to him what a miscarriage was because he didn't understand. He thought maybe it was something that I did or whatever. What he did, but it wasn't that. It was just life. It was a miscarriage.
How many kids at this point? You're at 2 kids?
That would have been 2 at that point. Yes.
2 kids. And how old?
That baby.
How old are you?
How old am I now or then at that time?
Yeah.
I would have been 26.
So you're 26 years old. You've got 2 kids. You've come back from Puerto Rico. You're living in New York again, right?
Right.
What are you doing for work?
I was working in the social service department with the children, aid to dependent children in daycare center. And that was my job for like 6 years, very much so. And then I moved over to what they call the Borough of Child Welfare back then, which is now ACS, Preventive Services for Children. I stayed with them for like 5 years. Then I moved on, became a parent. As I said, I had one child at that time, took care of that child, lost my second child, which was his son. And, from there, I just was auditing jobs here and there, security, mainly security jobs, mainly. Then
so when you say security, is that something that you saw yourself getting into, or it was one of those things where your life, as all of our lives, sort of take these twists and turns and you find yourself somewhere? Was that a field you were interested in?
Well, not actually. Someone introduced me to it. It was like, this is, at that time I needed a job. So, a friend of mine said, hey, listen, security is looking for somebody. So all you have to do is be able to take the test, pass it, and they put you to work. So I was like, sounds great. Let me jump in there and do this. Not knowing that actually I stayed in Nashville for exactly 8 long years. Not something I really see myself doing, but it was worth the time. I made sure I passed all of the requirements, which would say fire license, safety license. You had to pass these tests in order to stay in security.
Sure.
And that was yearly. You had to do those yearly in order to have those certificates. Yearly, you had to do that. If not, they have to put you out of work. So, I enjoyed, and I moved up as I went along. I came from a regular security in a building, securing a building, 2 buildings. From doing that, I became a base dispatcher. So that was my last job as a base dispatcher. Had that job for like 8 years. So I kind of stayed away from him during those times. Then he wound back up in jail. But before he went back to jail, I got pregnant with our daughter. And visits were crazy for me. I started visiting him on Rikers Island. It was just a lot. It was summertime, moving around, pregnant was not good. I went to see him one time and got very sick on the floor on a visit. And, it was like, okay, I got to get out of here. Me and the baby not liking this way. So came out. Next thing I know, they had moved him up to Eastern Correctional Facility. So I started visiting him there, and we wound up with a situation that wasn't good for him or me. So I stopped going to see him for 8 years. I left him alone, me and his child, no visits, because he needed to fix what he did, which wasn't well with me.
So this is now the mid-90s?
Mid-90s going into almost 2000, and I don't know what he did, but the parole officer had him rearrested. I never found out what that was about. And he went back in. I think he stayed in like a year and a half. He came back out, and he was doing well for like 3 years. We were here together for like 3 years. In the process, we were supposed to get married while he was outside of the prison, but that didn't happen.
So he must be really charming. He must be really charming to win you over like that.
He is very charming. He is very, very charming because he keeps my attention. And I'm saying, I don't know why with this man, but he is. He's very charming. And one thing about him that I respect a lot is that he's a man that he will tell you, I won't put my hand on a woman. That's just not him. I've experienced that with someone else, and it's not good. And, he's charming, very, as you can hear in my voice, he's very,
So, Theresa, we've covered a lot of ground, and I just wanted to ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
In terms of, you talked about visiting him at Rikers. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that. And then you talk about visiting him upstate. And so just want to give our listeners sort of a flavor of how far that is from where you are, and maybe some of the challenges that you may have experienced, because not only are you going through everything that you're going through in your own life, trying to raise your child, what is it like trying to visit someone while they're incarcerated in terms of the travel and the experience of going in and all of that? If you could expound a little bit on that.
Traveling from where I lived at the time, it was a challenge because you had to be able to get the train to 59th Street. Then you had to be able to there's a bus that goes from Queensboro Plaza out to Rikers Island. You had to make sure you was on the time schedule with them, because if not, you wouldn't be able to get in. And then where he was, once you got there were dogs. They give you these tickets and they tell you to hold them. They tell you don't switch numbers or whatever the case may be. Then they ask you to stand off the bus on the line. The dog goes on the bus. I guess that's the protocol of the dog sniffing out to see if anyone has any drugs. Then if that dog gets a hit on the person's seat that had that number, they come to that person and pull them out the line. Thank God I was never one of them. Although I had an incident where a young lady that was standing by me, I don't know if it was just that it was such a strong odor of what she had, but the dog couldn't make up his mind as to which one it was. Was it me? Was it her? So the system is the correction officer said, ma'am, I'm going to pull you up out the line along with this lady. However, we're going to separate y'all so that the dog can make a difference. That's the way it went. Oh. And, for me, oh my God, I was so nervous because I know I didn't have anything, but at the same time, I'm pregnant, and this dog is getting a hit that made it seem like it was me and her, but I thank God that he separated us and found that it wasn't me. So that in itself, it's a lot going into the prison system, even on records, but it became a norm for me. I want to say that. It became a norm. Right. Because I started visiting more. I didn't like the procedure that, they want you to lift up under your bra and then run your hand through your underwear, in your pants belt area, and take off your belt, stuff like that. Basically, to me, they were stripping you down like they would strip down an incarcerated person.
And they're taking away your dignity.
Is the process. Yeah, snatch away your dignity and make you feel as if you're an incarcerated person. And it's even down to the baby. When you take the child, you have to take out the Pampers, you have to open the Pampers, you have to let them see what's in the milk and stuff like that. And it was a lot. And now today, I can imagine what women have to go through with the babies. I see them when I go upstate, where Morris is located. That's my husband's name, Morris. Where he's at right now, I see a lot of the women go through so many changes, and I know it's hard on them because just for us going through, you can't wear your hat, you can't wear this. You need to not wear jewelry, period, if you ask me. You can't wear a bra or underwire bra. If your bra has the hooks in the back, you have to go take that off in the bathroom. They go and they'll shake it out, and then you put it back on. They also check the bathroom to see if possibly you threw anything away. And then they give it back to you, so you put it back on. It's a grueling process. It's dehumanizing, if you ask me that question.
Sure.
Anyone who visits a prison to visit an incarcerated person, they become dehumanized. They take all of your everything from you because now you're stripping to go see this person. Basically, they're stripping you away, shoes off, and certain socks. They don't want you to wear them. But my sock is a sock. What are you talking about? Where are you going with that? But anyhow, life going to visit incarcerated people is not as easy as a lot of people think it is. It's really bad, sometimes sad. Sometimes just seeing what they're doing to others around you makes you want to cry. I really have a real soft-hearted thing about older people. Back during the pandemic, when they allowed us back in, they kept us on the outside. Every inkling of whether every climate there was, we had to deal with it without any snow coverage to the rain, the snow, the wind, the cold. You had to stand out there. So
just to be clear, you're saying that during the pandemic, when you were waiting for a visit, you were standing outside in the elements.
Yes, and every element there was. Yes, Amber, that's what it was.
And they didn't do anything like stay in your car and we'll text you when it's time for you to come in.
No, they did not.
Right.
They did not. They made you stand out there. They took 5 at a time. You went in, you took your COVID test, then you had to wait there 15 minutes. After the 15 minutes, you come over, you let them see, you throw it away, then you go to registration. Now, that's leaving other people outside in the cold for 15 extra minutes, each 5 people. Now, with the elderly, I felt like they should have let them inside regardless. Babies, I've seen a few young ladies with their babies in the carrier. Freezing weather. Some of us had went back to, like some of them that had cars, they went back and got their coats or extra blankets they had in the car so that they could wrap them up and make them warmer until they got in. And this was a process that I felt New York State Department of Corrections should have changed when it came to very older people and babies. They shouldn't have to go out and be out there and stand in that cold weather. It was bad for us. It was bad for us.
Yeah, I have a question around that. Do you feel, or did you experience that some of those things that happen when people visit and the process that you have to go through may serve as some deterrent for families, that they may feel that it was a lot to go through and maybe visit less?
Yes, yes, and even with that, Amber, some of the CEOs will say, "Y'all still want to be here? I'm trying to see these people. They not worthy." But you can't tell us that. You understand what I'm saying? That's
Of
our
course.
family.
Right.
So when you say that you're heartless, you don't care, and we already know, well, most of us know that. But to tell that, okay, for example, there was an older woman in the line. She came all the way from Virginia to see her son. To stand there and tell this woman she's not, doesn't make sense for you to be here, da 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 da. That's not what you were supposed to say. What you should have been saying is, you know what, man, we're going to try to get you in first so that you can get out this element of the ice cold weather at that time, so that you don't have to be cold standing out there and to see your son. Yes, Jason.
Two COVID related things. So first is, for a while you weren't even let in, right? You're talking about being let in during COVID, but didn't they shut it down where people couldn't come visit at all for a while? And
Yes, we were shut down.
Yeah, and along those lines, I'm going to give you two questions. So that's one to address. And the second thing is, how did you feel watching the news and having the governor of New York doing victory laps over COVID response when you're having this type of experience with your loved one?
To answer your first question, they did not let us in for approximately 6 months. And at that time, things were still rampant. COVID was still rampant. They was crying that drugs were coming in, but who were bringing them? It wasn't us, the visitors. So yes, it was really bad being locked out. And how did we communicate? Through JPay, emails, phone calls. That was about all we could do until they let us back in. And when they did decide to start letting us in, as I said, you had to take the COVID test. You had to stand out in the cold. Some facilities had a tent. We did not, where my husband is located. And with Governor Cuomo, with his victory laps, I must say this, and it is part of my story, and I can never let it out nowhere else but in my story. Governor Cuomo took the youth out of the Adirondacks facility to take older people who were either already had COVID, or he was afraid that they would catch COVID. Older people, when I say older people, I'm talking about people 55 and older, he would take and put them way up in the Adirondacks, calling himself making this a medical unit for them. It was an old folks' home. Let's be real here. Cuomo didn't care what he did with these people. He had so many more people that could not fit in that Adirondack facility. Why? Because it was a dorm facility, which they used to put the adolescents in when they committed their crimes. Cuomo thought that doing this victory lap, saved him from getting lawsuits on top of lawsuits, because so many people were dying inside. And he couldn't control it. He didn't want to control it at the time because it kept telling him, the medical units kept telling him, you need to have these tests inside. You need to get this COVID shots inside. He didn't. However, I just want to say it took a few other grassroots advocacy groups to push Andrew Cuomo to send this inside. He just didn't care.
Well, first, I want to acknowledge sort of what you've just shared with us. As a lot of people think about COVID and everything that, entire society went through. And they don't necessarily always think about those who were incarcerated and their families at the time. Can you talk a little bit about how you may have gotten information? So, and what I mean by that is knowing or not knowing if your loved one was okay, if you didn't, the fear that you may have encountered, if you didn't hear from them in a number of days. Can you talk a little bit about that, your experience or others that you've interacted with?
Well, if I didn't get a phone call within a matter of 2 days, my concern will, heighten, and I would call the facility. Some of them were good enough or nice enough to tell you, well, that person is okay. They tell you, all right, they all right. We'll see why they're not calling home or whatever the case may be. Then, if I didn't receive an email after that, I definitely, my fear heightened about him being sick or taken out to the hospital or whatever. And I've heard others speak as well. And it got hard. It got hard on us. For me, I was always constantly looking for that phone call, or always constantly checking to see if I got an email. And, it was hard. What can I say? It was just hard on people
Right.
trying to know what was going on. It was hard because we couldn't see couldn't see them to see if they were okay. See, I have a thing about seeing a person that lets me know if that person is okay or if that person is going through something, And then let me say this, besides the COVID being the rampage at the time inside the facility, you also had people dropping from K2, fentanyl, and all of these things. So now the prison system is not saying nothing, but this is what's going on. And people were not able to know if it was their loved one or if it was somebody else they knew inside, but we would get little of information from docs. They didn't want to see her.
So are you
They didn't want
always
to see her.
are you always on a sense of like heightened alert, like waiting for that phone call to come that says there's an issue or a problem, and you're thankful every day that that doesn't happen?
Yeah, okay. For me, Jason and Amber, for me, my husband has a problem with his kidneys. He's a diabetic. He has high blood pressure. He has asthma. Okay. All of these ailments roll into one, can be any day or any moment death sentence. Okay. Yes, I stay always on a height of wanting to know if he's okay. Just to hear from him through an email or just a phone call will kind of ease my day. The one thing I'm not looking forward to, because he's 68 years old, so he's past the death age, the doc states is 58. I'm not looking forward to a phone call that says that he's dead. I don't never ever want to get that phone call. I don't know how that is, but I had a friend that experienced it, and still to the day she's not well at all with none of this, and she doesn't know how to breathe. I don't want to be that person, and I hear my husband say this to me all the time. I don't want to die alone inside of here by myself. That takes a lot on me, so I tend to want to make sure he's okay. If I can just hear from him. If I don't hear the voice, at least see something from him on an email. See, docs has gotten to a point where they will tell you anything to make themselves look better than better in your eyes. But docs do a lot of covering up. And I don't know, I'll share this with you guys. I don't know, Amber, because we haven't really seen each other in a while, but my husband was attacked here back in September by a correctional officer, an unprovoked attack that could have took his life from the way that he hit him. Had he hit him another inch near his kidney, he would have died. The CO tried to say he did not do this, that, and the other. However, what was fortunate for my husband was that where this incident happened, there was a camera to record every bit of the incident. Okay?
Right.
Every bit of the incident. So, what is it? Office of Special Investigation, OSI. They eventually, what they did, they moved my husband for 2 weeks to Otisville and then pulled him back to his facility. Then OSI came in and let him know they've seen the video. The officer was in the wrong. They were going to charge the officer. They were going to take whatever charges they put on him. They was going to drop those on my husband because he never touched him. All he did was stuck his hand out to the man, trying to protect himself from getting hit more. And the CO tried to say, oh, he came at me, these things.
Right, the typical.
But you were found guilty. Right, you were found guilty by way of that video. So, and it's things that go on inside that we don't even know about out here.
Yeah.
Some of them are so afraid to tell you about it because they figure they're listening on the calls, which they do. Some of their emails we're finding out they can read. And today, what they are doing, when you send them a letter, they open that letter, they read the letter, then they photocopy it to give to them and keep the original. Why? You say that drugs are coming in on paper. Okay, my thing to them is when we was able to take packages in, you scan it right then and there. So if you've seen something in it at that point, that's when you are supposed to approach it. You wait to say, oh, it was something in the package. Oh, this letter's got melted drugs on it or whatever. But now you're violating because you're reading the mail and then you're sending it to a printer or whatever to get them a copy. Cards. Some cards can't, like birthday cards or anniversary cards or whatever, can't go through today because they don't allow them.
So I want to explore, Theresa, I want to explore a little bit because you've talked a lot about communication. And so for those who are not familiar, JPay and phone calls and all of those things, a lot of people don't realize the cost that's associated with some of those things and who bears the burdens of the costs for communicating with loved ones. Can you talk a little bit about that? And since you've sort of seen the system for over a period of time, how has that changed?
Well, the families of the incarcerated people are the ones who bear the burden of paying for putting money on the phone. You as a family member, put money on the phone. You also can buy stamps that you could share with him. When I say stamps, there are stamps that they can write. They can send emails out with. And it's the same for the family member. We use the stamps when we're emailing them. That's stamps that we're using. It used to be one stamp per whatever amount of, characters of 1,000. If you did 600 characters in a letter, in an email, that was just one stamp. Now you can only use 54 characters and you're paying 2 stamps to it. So it's actually Docs is robbing you. Then if you send them money for their commissary, let's say I wanted to send him $50. I'm now sending altogether $54 because they're charging me $4 for that $50 to go into his account. That's robbery. We have no outs here. We can't send a package. If we do, we have to go through these vendors that they chose, which sometimes these vendors say, okay, we'll do it, but it's going to cost $16 extra on a package of like 7 items that come up to $250. Now I got to add $16 more to $250. Where do we think we have that money coming from? We are out here trying to take care of ourselves and our families out here. So nobody is helping us do this. Like some people, they get food stamps. I don't. I work. I have to use my money to, do my paycheck. So I don't want to see him go hungry in there because he's a diabetic. And they're feeding them soy food, which is no good for them or us. So the burden is really bad on the family right now because now they can't get the packages from home other than maybe clothing, and that's only a certain amount. And for the family to have to use these vendors. These vendors are not looking at us as people who will be, how can I say, people who will be, kind of suffering doing this. They're saying it's a money tree. Right. That's what they see. We're nothing more than a money tree to them. And the prices are ridiculous on the foods. Up that we would get out here at $2, $3, there's a $6 now. Even, can I just say this, even now on the visits, in the vending machines, where the chicken used to be $3.50 in a packet, now it's $5.50. What are we paying for? We're paying the state and their vendors. That's what we're paying. We are not, it's really bad. This here, no package bill is gone outrageous.
You talked a lot about Morris before, and now we're talking about the price of incarceration on the families. Do you have any sense of how much you spent in the last year as a family? Or
For him?
you personally, how much have you spent in the last year for Morris because he's incarcerated? How much additional funding for the phone calls, for the commissary, for all the things? Do you have any sense of that number?
Yeah, I do. A good $1,500, if not a little more.
I mean, I do have to say, just based on my own experience, I don't feel shocked. I mean, I should feel shocked by that number, but on phone calls alone, when my husband was incarcerated, I was spending $700 a month. And where did that money come from? We didn't have that money. We were dependent on friends and family who wanted to make sure that the children could speak with their father. And they were kind enough to help us. And that was a short period of time, right? So absolutely, that doesn't surprise me. What I was not as aware of is the character counts and the idea that you're paying a certain amount of money because they didn't have, when my husband was incarcerated, they didn't have access to that.
Right.
The idea that by the character, families are paying by the character to communicate with their loved ones is mind-blowing. And so it definitely is something that when I think about it, I think about the idea that this is an anti-safety sort of policy, because what keeps people going? What gives them hope? What keeps them connected to community? It is being able to communicate with their family and those pro-social supports. Right. So, Theresa, I really want to thank you for sharing your perspective on that for everyone. And I see Jason has an additional question.
Just underlining, it's not even a question. It's just there's to have a character penalty, right? Communication penalty. It's just insane because you want people to be communicating with their loved ones. And that's not something versus using up a phone. You're taking a real resource, you're taking a resource or a limited resource, but with sending an email to somebody, it's just mind-blowing that they would penalize you for writing more.
And then the other thing I want to highlight, Theresa, that you spoke about that I really appreciate you bringing up is this idea of how communications have changed. And so the packages and how they're dealing with written mail and the scanning, because that is a real thing. So when you think about I know not as many people use like snail mail as they used to, right? But when you think about receiving something in the mail or someone giving you a handwritten card, or when my husband was incarcerated, I used to make him little pieces of artwork and send them to him, like little watercolor cards and whatnot.
Yeah.
That is not the same in a scanned black and white form as it is holding something that someone else has touched, feeling that connection with your loved one. Would you agree with that?
I agree. I totally agree. It's not a connection no more once they do that. We are doing that from our heart because I'll give you an example. For Valentine's Day, because that's our anniversary. We got married on Valentine's Day.
Love that.
We're now 12 years in marriage, 48 years together. For Valentine's Day, I usually send him 14 cards. Then I'll add another card that's personal that I would, one of the blank cards I would get, I write my own personal note into him. And now what they do, they scan so much so he don't really get the reality of what the cards were. Like the actual card is black and white now. It's not, colorful. And, it's the anniversary cards, including the Valentine's Day cards. And then my personal card that says what I want him to know from my heart. It's taken away from the value of that. And this is something that they don't care. They just do it. And it's not heartfelt no more. It's like, okay, I got a black and white card from my wife. or my husband or my loved one. It's no feeling there no more. They have stripped them of that particular thing, where when they used to be able to get it, I know for my husband, for Morris, he would be so happy that he would pace all of the cars around his cell, and the guitars would go, "Okay, Grady, what's that?" And he'd be like, "That's for my wife. That's for my wife. It's for our anniversary. It's Valentine's Day, you know." And her personal card, I got that. Y'all can't see that one. It'd be on the wall, but it wouldn't be. It'd be in this little stash. And even to pictures now, when you send them pictures, they want you to really send it through the JPay system. I hate that. I used to him having, hard copy pictures. They can't even take, when you're taking pictures on visit, Amber and Jason, they can't take those pictures back to themselves.
Right.
You mentioned it earlier. The word you used earlier was they stripped you of your humanity as a visitor. And now they're stripping him of his humanity. This way is just another way of stripping him of his humanity. And so it's just, and to take this back to where we started, you've been dealing with this for years and years and years now. It's not like, oh, this happened in a week and it's
right.
Done with it, and we checked the box, we paid our price, and we're done. This is trauma that you've been living with, and Morris has been living with for a very, very, very long time. We're now in 2023, and I know you. Tell me a little bit about how you and Amber met.
I met Amber at a advocacy day in Albany, where I was with RAP, and actually a young lady named Melissa actually introduced me to Amber, and we hit it off from there. And Amber and I have been trying to do this here for over a year. It's like it was always something in our way, but God puts people where they need to be in His own time. So recently, I ran back into Amber up at an advocacy in Albany. And she was like, "Hey, Theresa." I was like, "Amber, oh my God, a long lost friend." And, she said, "Let's do it this time. Let's see if we can get it done." So this is where I'm at today. And this is how I met Amber at advocacy. I don't know if Amber remember, but I have a big mouth nowadays. And
no, I mean, I don't think I could forget that, but the loud and the honest and the authentic way that you share your story and that you do what you do in advocacy is just really an amazing thing to behold. So I would love to at some point talk a little bit about the advocacy work that you are doing with RAP and in other spaces. Just want to make sure that before we sort of move on to that, we talk a little bit about, I wanted to explore the health aspect. When we think about people who are incarcerated, I know that, in particular, my husband was very moved by an individual he was incarcerated with who had open heart surgery.
Oof.
And so he went out of the facility to have open heart surgery, came back, after having been in the hospital, chained to the bed and this and that, and needed certain things, right? Because if you think about after you have open heart surgery, you need to be walking, you need to be doing all of these things, you need to have a certain diet. And none of that happened for this gentleman. So I just want to explore that. And that person was subsequently released and died shortly after, which is something that really, that trauma of his friend experiencing that, also sort of affected my husband as well. So I just wanted to explore that a little bit. Your experience.
Okay, well, my husband was hospitalized because he had kept fainting and things like that. And he kept saying they didn't know what to do for him in the infirmary. Can I just pull it back a little? When my husband was incarcerated in Attica in 2006, my husband had, when he got arrested, he tried to escape from them. So he broke his leg. Took about an inch off his right leg. And he had been in Bellevue. They did what they did. They had the pins in it and rods and all of these things. But before they transferred him up to Attica, they removed all of this, right? In 2007, a doctor we found out was a veterinarian, because a lot of the doctors inside the facilities are docs, are not actual doctors. They are veterinarians in training and things of that nature. This is something that docs like to hide. But however, when they did this to my husband, this man went in my husband's leg and found nothing. The question to him was, what x-rays were you looking at? Tell us what x-rays you looked at to see that he supposedly had metal pins in his leg. He had none of that. All of that was removed when he was down in the city in Bellevue Hospital. So what x-ray did you look at that made you decide to take my husband into a hospital and cut his leg back open? Let us understand. The lawsuit against this doctor is what let us know he was a veterinarian in training. He was not an actual MD or PhD. He had none of that. The lawsuit literally litigated that the money that he requested, he couldn't even get that much of that money. Half of that went to the lawyer of the state, and the other half some of it had to go to victim services, which we understood. And what they left him with was little or nothing, but at least he had his leg. But behind all of that, he started suffering with MRSA. Okay? He started suffering with MRSA so much so that every now and then his leg would open up and leak pus. That's MRSA. They decided to take him back and do bone grafting and skin grafting. And still to the day, he has what I call a sinking hole in his leg where they cut it open again. So they never really put enough official bone structure back and skin. So when you see his leg, you literally see where they cut and how deep inside the leg it is. I thank God he's able to move around. Sure. You know, he has a cane. He gets around. Thank God for that. But sometimes that leg makes him really, he goes through a lot. Then when he had to go in to the hospital and they found out about this kidney problem, it was like, what's next? What do we do? How do we deal with this? Because the doctor called me personally and said to me, and he wasn't supposed to, but he did. He said, let me say something to you. If your husband's count go up to 5, he's going to be in dialysis mode. He's going to be in dialysis mode. And that's going to be a problem. So I said, why? He said, because the facility would have to make the decision. So it took me a while. I called the counselor and I said to her, if he has a count of 5, what's the process? Do y'all know what they told me? We might not be able to take him out for 3 days a week because we don't have security like that. Excuse you? This is a man that could be in dialysis. Y'all don't have no way of knowing how to function around that. So that told me that anybody else is sick like that inside at any facility in the state of New York, they're going to wind up dying in their cell. And that'd be the end of the story. That's what you're going to let the family know. You couldn't get them out to a hospital because you didn't have security. So they just languished away and died in their cell. This is what you're telling me.
The story you just told is horrific.
Yeah.
The everything, I mean, starting with Morris's leg and then talking about what the feelings that you must have gone through when you heard about his kidney, and knowing that when someone is in the care, basically in the care of the state, that if they get one of these diseases that requires a certain level of medical attention, that it's a death sentence, that we would rather warehouse people than care for people. And you know, it doesn't matter who they are. The state should not be causing this type of harm. We should be doing what we can to preserve life, not to treat it as if it's disposable. So I am so sorry for what you've been through and what your husband has been through and your family has been through. And it's just mind blowing.
I think it's important, and I also want to express those same sentiments to you, Theresa. it's just mind-blowing to know that your situation is one of many, right? In the system. And when we think about healthcare for people who are incarcerated, it really is a situation where it's like acute care all the time. There's no long-term thinking when people are incarcerated for long lengths of time, which we can talk about why that is bad, right? But if we are going to do that, to treat it like, throwing Band-Aids, throwing some Motrin on it or whatever, right? Instead of actually caring for people with not only dealing with issues that they have and that arise, but also preventative care, right? So there's a human aspect to this, but there's also a financial cost that is exorbitant. Right. So I think that plays really nicely into talking a little bit about release-aging people in prison and why they care about these issues so much.
As you know, release-aging people in prison is RAP. And we are now fighting for two bills, which is one is the elder parole bill, which is someone who's 55 years old who has served 15 years. All we ask is for consideration for these people to be able to go to the parole board, present themselves as to who they are today, not their crime, because that crime can never, ever be eliminated. Never. That crime will always be in their life. But to show that they have rehabilitated themselves, deserve a second chance, redeem themselves, let the board see that and make that decision. Not allow them to keep laying there languishing and wait to die. Docs say that 55, this is Doc's age, 55 years old. But they also state at 58 is when most of the people die in prison. Our second bill is fair and timely parole. That's a bill that says the same thing basically, except for it says if a person has served 15 years of their time, then and they are able to show you that they have, redeemed themselves, show that they have completed all programming. Maybe even some of them have gotten college degrees along the way. Why not release these people? When they go to the board, you see these things, let them go. Yes, the crime can never change. The crime will never change. It's always going to be there. But to see that these people have grown in their growth, because you say that this is what prison is about, to put them in there, to change the course of how they live, what they've done. A lot of them have admitted and have been remorseful about what they've done. So if a person could come to you, because we on the screen thing now. They don't see them in person no more. They see them by a screen. You really don't know who I am because you're looking at me from a screen. So to me, that's still inhumane, and you really don't care. But these two bills only ask that you do two things. Allow them to be seen as to who they are today. And two, we want them to put on the board, because right now they only have 22 or 24 people on the board. There should be 29 to 30 people. Some of the people we are asking to be put on that board are formerly incarcerated people who have degrees, okay? So we ask that you put someone on there like that can understand the other side of what it is to be inside and go through what they go through. Yes, Jason.
What are the two bills? Say the names of them. I know you talked about them, but.
Okay. The first bill is elder parole.
Elder parole.
That's the elder parole.
And the second one?
The second is fair and timely parole.
Fair and timely parole. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so just to clarify for those who are listening, these are two measures that are New York state based. And I want to mention, because when you talk to people, as Theresa mentioned, we have done some advocacy together on this, and Restorative Action Alliance is involved in supporting these two measures as well. When you talk to people, they like to say things like, oh, you're just mass releasing people or things like that. It's important to understand that this is only a chance at a chance, right? This is not an
Yes.
automatic release bill. This is not, we're opening up the doors and everybody's running out. This is
No.
an opportunity for people to present themselves in a fair way.
Right. You know,
Right.
And to write the way that people are evaluated by making sure that the parole board has a variety of people with a variety of different understandings on them. Am I characterizing that correctly, Theresa?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, you are.
and
Yes.
Theresa, here it's interesting because this is our first opportunity on the podcast to talk about something that happened recently here in Connecticut. So there was a hearing recently to reconfirm the members of the Board of Pardons and Paroles, the chair and all the members, and they had to go in front of the Judiciary Committee, and they took a lot of heat because in 2021 they issued more commutations than they had previously. They went from like 1 to 71 or something. It was in that range, and they took a lot of heat because they had just increased, they had changed their policy, and they took a hard look at it. They had actually stopped because of COVID. There were some reasons they stopped, and they came back in and they looked at it. And I'm sitting here listening to it, and as we just talked about, as Amber just mentioned, it was an opportunity to go in front. They have an attorney. They have to show all the things that they've done while they were incarcerated that show that they're different people now, that they've grown. And it was not a free pass. It was actually just an opportunity to have a hearing. And there were people that were opposed to just giving people the hearing because, oh, this is more than we've ever done before. So we're sitting here saying there should be more commutations. There's another guy that I'm following who was turned down from having a hearing because he has 2 years. He'll be eligible for parole in 2 years. But as you know, every year is a lifetime. And for you,
Yes,
when
it
you're
is.
sitting here telling us that the average age for people to end up passing away is 58, 2 years could mean the difference between life and death. So I really appreciate you being here and talking about all this and helping highlight some of these issues.
I want to say this, and sometimes when they go to the parole board and they get rejected and they get extra 2 years added on to their time, they get refused and 2 years added on, and no one understands why would you put 2 more years on this person's sentence. First of all, the judge has sentenced this person to this time. Now that I'm in front of the board, you want to deny me on this time and add more time to it. I'll just say our director at RAP has done 38 years. He was denied, I believe he said 4 times. We've had some that were denied 14 times. And now if you had 25 years and add 14 to that, come on now, you're really taking a person's life from them.
Absolutely. And so I want to, again, for those who are not familiar, clarify something. So when you're speaking about the sentences, a lot of people feel that or don't have an understanding of how sentences are given. So the difference between an indeterminate sentence and a straight sentence. So a lot of times people will be sentenced to, 12 years to life or, something like that. So that gives them the opportunity after they've been there for the 12 years to go before the parole board. So that's what you're referring to when you say they're adding additional time.
Yes. Like, for instance, my husband has what we call a flat bed, 40 years, right? So when he goes in front of the board on his 40th year, Lord will help him make it before that, but if he goes before the board could turn around and say, okay, you did 40, but we add in 2 more. So now you got to do 42 years instead of the 40. And then after the 2 years go by, he may go back and hear again 2 more years. This is truly inhumane. This is truly stripping a person of life in itself. An older person, we had someone who went to the board. He was so scared, so nervous that they were going to reject him. He asked to go to the bathroom. This man went to the bathroom and had a massive heart attack because that's how afraid he was that they were going to deny him on his 10th time at the board. This is insane. This is insane. To do something like that to a person, you got to understand. This person is taking a big chance after doing so many years, and now I come here. I'm already afraid because you have denied me so many times before, and I'm afraid you're going to deny me again. So I go to the bathroom. Maybe he went just to shake it off, but he died because he had a massive heart attack.
Right.
And did they allow that? Did they allow him to release? The funny thing is, yes, they approved his parole, but he done died now. So what does it do for him? What does it do for the family to hear this? This man was going so many times, and he was up in age. He just wanted to go home, to get back into his community, to serve his community in a better way today in his life, while he had the time to do it. And this is my fear for my husband. If he has to do a full 40 years old, my husband will be 90-something years old. Maybe not even, I'll be honest here, if I can, he might not be able to take care of his own body as far as using the bathroom and things of that nature. This is what we are looking at. The cruelty behind the wall is so sad for men and women. Why allow them to die inside like that? I don't know if, Amber, you remember hearing about Val Gator.
Yes.
This woman was suffering with cancer, and they was feeding her Tylenol for it. That's esophagus. She had something going on with her esophagus, and you want to give her Tylenol instead of getting her out to see that she had this cancer and take care of it. Val was the oldest woman incarcerated in New York State prison.
Right.
Val died inside a New York State facility, Bedford. Unnecessary death. Unnecessary death they allow to happen inside. So for me, Jason and Amber, my biggest fear is to get a phone call that Morris is dead.
Right. And
kill me.
You touched on something that I really, really believe in, and I've heard many people speak very eloquently about, and is that people want to get out and they want to serve their community. Because when you talk about what has happened during a period of incarceration, you alluded to the fact that people are working on education. Many people are mentoring other people. They are doing self-improvement. And a lot of this is in spite of the system, right? It's not provided by the system. It's provided by outside entities. It's the residents of prisons and jails that are developing their own programs to help each other and things like that. So all of this is going on. And then who better, right, to know how to prevent violence and disrupt violence than individuals who have experienced it, right? And so these are the types of people that we need in our communities to stop these cycles. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. The people we're talking about. Who better to come back to the community to help to do the resistance towards violence, show these young folks out here, especially the young folks who seem to be going rampant, to help them understand if you go in there, it's not helping you. Out here is where you need to learn how to be a better person. We are out here to teach you just that, because there's many of them that's mentors in here, okay? There's many of them who have gotten degrees. There's many of them who's inside right now teaching them to the best of their ability how to be better, develop better skills. So when you come back out here, you'll be able to help your community just like we want to come out and help the community. We've had some to come out right now, especially within rap. We have a few of them that's out right now helping in the community. And it's going well. It's going well. As I alluded to with you guys, I've been in rap for 4.5 years. When I walked in the door of rap, I didn't know anything whatsoever about being an advocate. As my aunt used to say, you're an abolitionist. No, I'm not. Yeah. And to my fellow executive director, he says, you are my effing hero. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. Stop. Because I used to wouldn't talk. I used to duck and dodge. So when it came to rallies, I was like, oh, not me. But I'll be honest, what took me on my trail, we just lost a very great person, Mr. Mayfield. He was like, get on up here, girl, and say what you got to say. And that was at Union Square, 14th Street. And I talked about Como, and I said, I wonder if he would put Matilda in a nursing home like that. at that time of COVID. I was really upset because I'm like, my husband could be put all the way up there. I can't reach him.
I just regret that we don't have that we can't do like a double episode, because
Right.
one of the
Right.
things for sure when we're talking with someone who's been involved with the system, I mean, you've got, as you know, Amber was asking questions before about how have things changed. I mean, we could probably cover 5 episodes talking to you about how have things changed. What's your experience been? What are your thoughts? I mean, you've got so much to offer. It's wonderful talking with you today. What I would like to, as we start to wrap up, I want to give Amber a chance to say a couple things, but one question for you is, if someone wants to get involved and support RAP in any way, how could they do that?
Well, you could go to our Facebook account. It has the RAP Releasing Aging People in Prison. And you can either go there or you can get in touch with me. I can give you my information. You can call me and I can get you directly involved with RAP.
Yeah, we'll make sure that those things get in the podcast notes.
Yes. Thank
Amber,
you.
do you have any final thoughts?
So I do. I always like to ask people sort of a similar question. We have a standard question that we start with in the beginning, and this is sort of my signature question at the end. So if you had the opportunity to talk to somebody who was at the beginning of a journey similar to yours, and you had one piece of advice for them, what would it be?
My advice to them would be, if you came out here from doing a long time inside, come to your community and show exactly what you said you learned. You learned to now be more settled. You learned to come out and help and to participate in programs and helping others do better, helping the youth stay on the right track, even helping your elders learn how to do things that they probably don't even know how to do. I know that a lot of them don't know about tablets, don't know about computers. So if you have that skill, come out here and start a program just like you have started inside to help them out here so that they can finish flourishing, so that they don't have to look back and go back into crime, so that they can say, oh, I'm able to teach somebody else too. Let me get in here, learn what I can learn. Now let me help guide some people to the right side. Because, see, right now, it's our youth that's really losing it out here. And I feel like even to the youth, if they came out from doing time and they learned all of these skills inside and things like that, and even graduated to, say, let's say high school and a little bit of college, maybe they got associate's degree. But come on out here. They have programs now that formerly incarcerated people can go to and finish their education, and then come out and be teachers. We have a guy that's a teacher now. And, you know, it was shocking to learn that he came out, he got his bachelor's, he's now fighting for his master's, but he's a teacher. And he's teaching not only inside the college, but he also has a program he started with some, I think it's with the freedom fighters, that's about pulling in the youth, teaching them things that they need to know to be, you know, resistance to jail sentences, resistance to the crimes. Look at the statistics and see, in the last couple of years, the crime level has went down. It hasn't went up. The recidivism for older people coming home is almost zero.
Right.
Okay? Almost zero. So that's what I would, you know, my encouragement to people who are coming home or who's home and you know, looking at going inside, stop and think about the fact that there's things that you can do out here to save other people's lives.
All right. That's a
Beautiful.
Great message. Thank you so much, Theresa, for speaking with us today. It was wonderful to get to know you a little bit. I hope we get our paths continue to cross as we work together for positive change. And I hope there's a time when Morris is home with you, healthy, and this is just you're just working to help other people. So
yes, thank you. That's my goal, to keep, even if he was to come home today or tomorrow, I will still be with RAP, working to bring home others, men and women, because they deserve a chance. And Amber, you know, I love you to death. Every time I see you, I'm like, oh, wow, they got Amber. And now I know Jason. So, guys, thank you for this podcast. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about things that are going on within the criminal justice system. And, you know, I just pray that we can carry it on and our 2 bills get passed. You know, those 2 bills are so very important, the elder parole and the fair and timely parole bill. And we're close. We're close.
We're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing.
Yes.
This is going to be the year.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah.
Until next time, Amber.
We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Amplified Voices, a podcast lifting the experiences of people and families impacted by the criminal legal system. For more information, episodes, and podcast notes, visit amplifiedvoices.show.